Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 1261 of the Juicebox Podcast. Today I'll be speaking with Nicole, who is the mother of a child with type 1 diabetes. Before her child's diagnosis, the kid experienced some pretty major personality shifts that included talking about suicide, becoming transgendered, and becoming a cannibal. Nicole has celiac and diverticulitis, and she's had most of her colon removed. There's some hypothyroidism in here, as well as a great story. Please don't forget that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. Don't forget, if you use my link, drinkag1.com/juicebox, you'll get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first order. And if you go to cozyearth.com and use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout, you're going to save 30% off of your entire order. I know that Facebook has a bad reputation, but please give the private Facebook group for the Juicebox Podcast a healthy once-over. Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. Today's episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes, a company that's bringing people together to redefine what it means to live with diabetes. Later in this episode, I'll be speaking with Jalen. He was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at 14. He's 29 now. He's going to tell you a little bit about his story. To hear more stories with Medtronic Champions, go to medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox or search the hashtag Medtronic Champion on your favorite social media platform. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by the only implantable sensor rated for long-term wear, up to 6 months, the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox.
Hi, my name is Nicole. I am from Argyle, Texas. I have 3 kids, an 8-year-old son, a 10-year-old daughter, and a 12-year-old daughter who is type 1 diabetic.
Okay, hold on a second. 8-year-old son, 12-year-old daughter with type 1?
Yeah, and a 10-year-old daughter as well.
Gotcha. And you didn't have to tell me you were in the South because a moment ago you asked your husband to bring you the piece of paper. And
when that came out of my mouth, I knew you were going to make fun of that.
Oh my God, I'm not making fun of it. It was amazing. Now, I thought I was watching like the Barbara Mandrell hour with my grandmother. And does anyone remember that? I'm very old. I just realized.
I don't, unfortunately.
No, that's good. That means you're not 50 years old. How old are you?
I'm 40.
There you go. That's a good age. Okay, 3 kids, married because I heard the husband helping with the headphone setup.
Yes.
Live in Texas. And your oldest has type 1. When were they diagnosed?
About a year ago.
A year.
Mm-hmm.
Was it something you were expecting or completely unexpected?
Oh, absolutely unexpected. Yeah. Had no idea.
There's no other. I'm sorry.
Nobody. Yeah, nobody in our family has it.
Gotcha.
In our extended or anything.
Nothing. Yeah. How about with you or your husband, any other autoimmune issues?
I do. Yeah, I don't know if you would count this as autoimmune, but I'm intolerant to a lot of food. I've always thought that I was celiac, but I've never been diagnosed. They always say I'm not, but I feel so much better when I don't eat certain things. My mom has tons of autoimmune issues, and celiac does run in our family. So,
can you run through some of your mom's stuff?
Yeah, it actually started when she was about my age. She had diverticulitis. She's had surgery to take out a lot of her colon, ankylosing spondylitis, interstitial lung disease, are just a few of the things that she's been.
How old is she now?
She's 70.
How is she doing?
She's doing okay. She was diagnosed with that interstitial lung disease probably about 6 months ago. And that's been a struggle for sure. She goes in and out of bouts with things, as you do with immune disorders. So, but she's doing pretty good. they don't really understand her interstitial lung disease because it's not like a typical interstitial lung disease.
Mhm.
They're seeing a lot of different types of lung diseases now that are, I don't know if it's COVID, you don't want to blame it all on that, but
Right.
certain things that have just come about lately that are just not explained in the typical way.
The internet says it's rare. A group of disorders that causes progressive scarring of lung tissue. Interstitial lung disease refers to a group of about 100 chronic lung disorders characterized by inflammation and scarring that make it hard for the lungs to get oxygen.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Well, that's your autoimmune tree right there. So.
Yeah. And then, of course, my grandmother had some stuff, and my husband's grandmother is celiac. And so, I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah. No kidding. Just not a thing you would expect because nobody expects when you're growing up. No one says to you now, mommy's got spondylitis. And
right.
Yeah. That sucks. And you talk a little bit about your eating stuff. What do you avoid that makes you feel better? And what does feel better mean?
Well, prior to her diagnosis, I had some blood work done because I was just feeling terrible. And in fact, some of the things that she had been feeling around the time of her diagnosis, I had been feeling, but I have normal blood sugars, so I never was told anything about that. But I'm sure it's unrelated, but I have anxiety and I have a hard time with gluten and dairy specifically. Like I'm highly intolerant to those two things, according to my blood work and just my life. I mean, when I was little, I was diagnosed as dairy intolerant. And then as I got older, I kind of just started eating whatever I wanted. And I noticed that it just really affected everything in my life. So I just cut it out and I feel a lot better. But after her diagnosis, I went crazy and started eating everything I wanted because I figured, I guess I was like depressed and I just thought I could eat whatever I wanted at that point because I was like, nothing else matters. I've got to take care of this kid.
You were like, F it. God damn it.
Yes, I was.
What am I doing?
I was like, who cares about me? I just have to focus on her. So
turned into a
which is the wrong thing. Which is the wrong thing to do.
You don't have to say that, Nicole.
Yeah.
We all know.
Yeah.
You're up in the plane. You're like, we're doing it. We have 3 kids. Everything's fine. Blah blah blah. Then one day you're like, let's just crash this thing into the ground and see what happens. Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
Like I was focusing so much on what she did and what she ate and all of her things that I just kind of put all my needs, all of what I know is right for me back in the back burner, so to speak. So
that's fairly common.
Yeah.
Tell me what your anxiety looks like day to day.
Before she was diagnosed, I guess I had it's hard to explain. Somewhere around puberty, I think maybe I've always had anxiety, just like an underlying anxious personality. And I tend to overthink things, which obviously in the world of type 1 diabetes can be kind of a bad thing. Because, I mean, as you know, it's not like you can really control it.
Yeah.
You can control what you can control and you can't what you can't. So it's taught me a lot about that part of my personality in order to just calm down and take a deep breath and do your best. It's actually been kind of therapeutic for me, to be honest. Because my whole life I've spent overthinking things and kind of just ruminating too long on the things that go wrong and beating myself up about it. Okay. So that's just kind of how I was.
How's your energy?
My energy?
Yeah.
Low.
Do you feel rested after you sleep all night?
No.
Have you ever had your thyroid checked?
Yes.
What was your TSH?
It was normal. I don't know the exact number. I've had it checked twice. And in fact, I just went to a hormone doctor and she said I have no testosterone, like none. It didn't even show up in the test. Yeah. So that's something. And then I'm low progesterone. So I don't know. My mom's also, I didn't say this, but she's hypothyroid.
Yeah. So Nicole, is there a way for us while we're talking to find out what your TSH was? Because they'll say normal, but I'm going to tell you that over 2 or so probably needs medication. And if you're having hypothyroid symptoms and you're over a 2, a good doctor would give you a little bit of Synthroid or something.
Let me check while you're talking. It might take a second.
Also, Nicole, do you know how to make a hormone?
No.
Don't pay them. Can I tell you something while you're looking?
What?
I hold that stupid joke in every time for 10 years when somebody says hormone. And I realize today it's never going to stop, that feeling I have, until I just say it one time. So I'm saying it here with you.
That's funny. I'm glad you got that out.
Yes. I swear to you, I don't know how to tell you that every time someone says the word hormone, I think, you know how to make a hormone. Don't pay them.
That's hilarious.
It's the worst dad joke ever. But nevertheless. Yeah. So I really want to know what your TSH is, because you sound like you have hypothyroidism.
I just sound like it.
No, you do. Anxiety, tired.
Yeah.
Does your hair fall out?
Yes.
You have trouble losing weight?
Yes.
Are your nails brittle?
Yes.
Skin dry?
Yes.
Yeah. Let's find that TSH number.
Hold on. It's coming.
Let's guess it's like a 4. And your doctor said, that's in range. And then that was the end of it.
1.6.
Damn it. Not right. 1.6. 1.6 should be okay.
Sorry to let you down.
God damn. Did it vacillate? Has it ever jumped up and gone back?
I don't know. I would have to go to my old doctor's records and find that, which might be
do it on your
too much time.
No,
I'll do it. Yeah.
Do it on
I'll
your
do
own time. But if it's ever bounced around, I don't know. Yeah, 1.6 would be tough to get somebody. But you have so many symptoms.
I know. And I have really low B12. So I am on some shots for that.
Are you going to get some testosterone?
I did, actually. I had my first injection last week.
Oh.
So
what happened? Did you turn into Hulk, the Incredible Hulk? Today's podcast is sponsored by the Eversense CGM. Boasting a 6-month sensor, the Eversense CGM offers you these key advantages: distinct on-body vibe alerts when high or low, a consistent and exceptional accuracy over a 6-month period, and you only need 2 sensors per year. No longer will you have to carry your CGM supplies with you. You won't have to be concerned about your adhesive not lasting, accidentally knocking off a sensor, or wasting a sensor when you have to replace your transmitter. That's right, there's no more weekly or bi-weekly hassles of sensor changes, not with the Eversense CGM. It's implantable, and it's accurate. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. The Eversense CGM is the first and only long-term CGM. Eversense sits comfortably right under the skin in your upper arm, and it lasts way longer than any other CGM sensor. Never again will you have to worry about your sensor falling off before the end of its life. So if you want an incredibly accurate CGM that can't get knocked off and won't fall off, you're looking for the Eversense CGM. EversenseCGM.com/juicebox. This episode is sponsored by Medtronic Diabetes. MedtronicDiabetes.com/juicebox. And now we're going to hear from Medtronic champion Jalen.
I was going straight into high school, so it was a summer heading into high school.
Was that particularly difficult?
Unimaginable. I missed my entire summer. So I was going to a brand new school. I was around a bunch of new people that I had not been going to school with. So it was hard trying to balance that while also explaining to people what type 1 diabetes was. My hometown did not have an endocrinologist. So I was traveling over an hour to the nearest endocrinologist for children. So, outside of that, I didn't have any type of support in my hometown.
Did you try to explain to people, or did you find it easier just to stay private?
I just held back. I didn't really like talking about it. It felt like it was just a repeating record where I was saying things and people weren't understanding it. And I also was still in the process of learning it. So I just kept it to myself, didn't really talk about it.
Did you eventually find people in real life that you could confide in?
I never really got the experience until after getting to college. And then once I graduated college, it's all I see. You can easily search Medtronic Champions. You see people that pop up and you're like, wow, look at all this content. And I think that's something that motivates me. I started embracing more, how I live with type 1 diabetes.
I did.
Yeah.
I just, no. No, I do feel like I have more energy, though. I'm going to say that. I don't know if it's what is that effect where
Placebo
you think something?
Effect.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
But I don't think it is. I have more energy. It's a little bit harder to sleep, but.
How are they going to track it? And do you get more?
They're going to do other blood tests at 2 months and so she's just giving me a little bit every week. And then blood test, see how it's working, see how I'm feeling, and then go from there.
Mm-hmm. Blood test, see how it's working. I like this for you. Okay, so maybe this mimics thyroid, and I'd love to know if that's the case.
I mean, she did say I have the antibodies, thyroid antibodies.
Oh.
So she thinks I'm in the beginning stages of Hashimoto's.
Then would a tiny little bit of Synthroid not be...
I don't know. I could ask her.
I would.
I mean,
what the hell?
Yeah.
Because first of all, I want to be right. But secondly, I want you to feel better.
I do too. Trust me.
Honestly, I want you to feel better. And then I want to be right. But I thought it was funnier the other way.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you sound classic. And I mean, the numbers obviously not indicative, but
right.
If she says you have the antibodies, then would the tiniest little bit of Synthroid not be valuable?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree. I mean, I can ask her and see what she says.
It's a short life, Nicole. And
I know.
Too short to be living like that. You know what I mean?
I know. Yeah. Trust me.
So tell me a little bit about how we figured out that your oldest has type 1.
She got sick. Classic, right? She got sick, and after her obvious symptoms went away, she still wasn't feeling right. And I didn't know she was having a lot of anxiety. And I kind of thought, well, you're like your mother probably, but I thought it was preteen issues, to be honest. She's almost 12. She had just started a new school. She seemed to have grown a lot, and, just her body is changing. And I thought maybe she was going through something emotionally. So I took her on a little mother-daughter trip, and I just wanted to talk to her about things and see if there was anything on her mind that she just wasn't telling me and that she was going through, because I couldn't really pinpoint anything, physically that would be wrong with her. And it wasn't until that trip that I kind of noticed that she was, urinating more frequently. She just didn't want to eat as much. I would offer her all of the sugar and treats, and she kind of just not really want it, which is strange for her. And we went back, and she said she actually felt better, and she went back to school and got back into soccer. And I noticed that she was kind of acting like herself again.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it was obviously because she was doing athletics and her blood sugar was more stabilized at that point after the holidays. And then about a month later, we decided to go on a ski trip. So we were driving through the mountains on a 13-hour ski trip, and she had to go to the bathroom what seemed like every 30 minutes. And my husband and I were just like pulling our hair out. Just, what is going on? What are you drinking back? Do you have like a trough back there that you're drinking out of that we don't know about? And we feel bad looking back on it, because we were we were a little mean about it, to be honest.
We're trying to get somewhere. Will you hold it in, please?
You have 3 kids in the car, it's just madness. And we thought she was just being dramatic. But she ended up peeing in her seat at one point. And that's when I looked at him and I said, there is something wrong. And then we got to the house we were staying in Colorado, and I told my mom about all the symptoms. And my mom's actually a nurse. She used to be a pediatric nurse.
Okay.
Not in that way. She was in the hospital doing surgeries and stuff. So she didn't know too much about it, but she said, it kind of sounds like diabetes. And I looked at her like, you are effing crazy.
This
like there's
woman.
There's no way. Like, come on. And of course my mind was going straight to all the worst possible scenarios at that point, like cancer and stuff like that, because she had been losing weight.
Okay. Is that your anxiety, by the way, going right to cancer?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Like, do not give me a Google for symptoms, and that's why I didn't Google her symptoms, because I knew that I would do that. I knew that I would assume the worst, even though it was probably nothing, which of course it wasn't.
Yeah. And
my dad, who's like the most laissez-faire person alive, he was like, I think there's something wrong, and he never thinks things are wrong. Like So we actually left early from the ski trip. I got her an appointment with her doctor immediately. And I said, she's going to the bathroom a lot and she's lost weight. And they're like, oh, that's probably a virus. There's stuff going around. It's, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I don't know. She's drinking a lot. And that's when their little antennas went up and they finger poked her and she was at what, like 460 or something.
Okay.
And told us to go to the hospital.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Your mom was like, I got it right, finally.
I know.
Yeah.
I know inside, it's like she didn't want that, but I think she was pretty, content with knowing that she knew. If that makes sense.
Listen, Nicole, what I know is the mother-daughter dynamic is fascinating. You're like,
I love my mom. Don't get me wrong.
No. It's just fascinating in general.
I know.
Yeah, there's a split second where none of this was about your daughter, and all of it was about I don't want her to be right, and
to say I told you so.
Yeah. All that. Finally, I got her. Your mom's like, I got her. I knew I'd get her eventually. And anyway, well, that sucks.
Yeah.
So, did you go to the hospital in Colorado? Or did you make the trip back first?
No, we made the trip back. So we had left a day early so I could get her back. And also I was thinking maybe it was a little bit of altitude sickness because, she was nauseous and not wanting to eat and just feeling over, malaise and stuff like that. So I just thought, it could be explained by that as well. So
yeah, would have been nice.
Yeah, would have been nice for sure.
Yeah, but it sounds like, fairness, you guys have a touch of the autoimmune. So
Yeah.
Glad to know.
For sure.
All this stuff, it sucks, but it's better to know than not to know.
For sure. Yeah. And now I do know. Before I feel like I lived such a easy life, I would say, before all this. And not that this is the worst thing that could ever happen to somebody, but when something like this happens, it does put things in perspective, about your health and just being thankful for when everybody's healthy,
certainly. Yeah, so. Certainly. I understand. Okay. So how long do you think this was happening before you caught it and ended up in the hospital?
Looking back, I think January is when so January of before that, February.
So maybe 4 or 6 weeks, something like that?
Maybe. Yeah. 4 to 6 weeks.
And did it answer your questions about what you thought was her teen angst?
Somewhat, because I know that it affects your brain, your blood sugar.
Yeah,
because that's all. I thought she was going crazy. I thought she needed to see a mental doctor.
Really?
Yeah. I thought she was, because she had been learning all these new things in her life about, I don't want to say the word, but she heard about suicide and somehow she heard about transgenderism and things like that. And she was like, what if I do that? And I said, what is going on? It's all of a sudden she just started reeling on these questions and just thinking these thoughts that it was hard to talk her into reality. I don't know how to explain it.
So not something that she had considered previously, that all of a sudden she was going down rabbit holes on.
She talked about cannibalism. I was like, what do you,
wait, hold on. Was she considering it?
Yeah. She was like, what if I'm like, wait, whoa.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
In the span of 6 weeks, your daughter said, what if I'm in the wrong body? What if I'm supposed to be eating human flesh? And what else?
Yes. And what if I commit suicide one day?
Oh.
I was like, oh, yeah.
Were you and your husband in the other room going, what if we left this one in Colorado?
I didn't know what I was looking up therapists,
Right. No, I understand.
I had no idea what was going on. And then when her blood sugars got stabilized, all these things just kind of dissipated. She was dealing with a whole new set of issues.
She's not asking any of these questions any longer.
No, not anymore. She's got, she's able to talk herself through logic now. Before it was just... Yeah,
there's an episode of the podcast called Altered Minds where Jenny and I picked through pretty specifically how high-low blood sugars impact your ability to have cognitive stability.
Right.
Yeah. And so the high or vacillating blood sugars and then even just different thinking than you're accustomed to, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
I was going to say the topics are just in the zeitgeist, but I don't know where she got cannibalism from.
That one threw me as well.
Yeah, I would have been like, oh my God, what did we do?
She heard about people marrying their own family member and was like, am I supposed to marry my sister? And I was like, I'm telling you.
All kinds of rabbit holes. Yeah.
I didn't understand how to even approach it because I don't think she was coming from a place where she could even understand.
Have a conversation.
Right.
Wow,
So,
that's interesting. Also, maybe don't let her have TikTok.
No, she does not have TikTok.
Oh, okay. Because
she doesn't have any of that stuff, and that's why. Because I'm a mom that's like doesn't let them do much.
Wait, so she doesn't have that social media, and you're a little you live a little rural, is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, we go to a Christian school, a private school, and I was just like, what is happening? I have no idea where she's hearing these things from. Well,
listen, now that she's feeling better, if I was you, I would at very least ask where you found out about cannibalism and then call the cops on that person.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's a good point. That's a good one. Maybe they were reading Lord of the Flies or something. Who knows?
That's something. Wow. Okay. Yeah. And how quickly after the insulin starts working, do you think, oh, wow, her personality is completely back? Pretty
quickly. I mean, once her blood sugars got stabilized, I saw the light back in her eyes. It just, that went away. And I didn't really realize her eyes were just kind of fading, and she looked tired all the time. But after her blood sugars got back, her whole look and demeanor changed back to how she used to be.
Wow.
So
that's something. Yeah. Well, I'm obviously glad you figured it all out.
Yeah.
But talk about then what comes next, because your note to me is pretty simple. It says newly diagnosed and the struggles that come with it, basically. Right. Like what happened next
Well, I mean, I kind of told you, obviously I am high anxiety, and something like that with a person who's high anxiety can really throw you for a big loop, to say the least.
So what was happening to her before diagnosis started impacting you, which, by the way, I'm just going to come out in your defense and say that we'd all be thrown off if our kid was like, maybe we should be cannibals.
Right.
But then from there, the diagnosis, I assume, is incredibly impactful for you. Can you tell me how that made you feel first off?
Guilty at first, for sure, that I missed it and that I was just so naive to her symptoms and what she was going through. And then obviously I do something that caused this. Is it something that I did when she was pregnant? Is it, I'm Googling, of course, Dr. Google over here, doing all the things that I shouldn't be doing. But I found you pretty quickly, and that really helped. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't want to cry, but I might, because you put reason behind things, and you made things really simple to understand in a time where I felt like chaos could really take control. I just listened to your podcast like all day, every day. I feel like just to the ones that tell you the simple things. And then I listened to other people's story. Like I would kind of go through the newly diagnosed stories and listen to those just to kind of feel like I wasn't alone. Mm-hmm. And that really, really, really helped, because I didn't know anybody. And I also needed to just get my head clear on the situation and what I need to do in order to be the best caretaker for her.
Right.
And so I wasn't sleeping. That was the thing. And I had lost about 15 pounds because I was just not eating for 3 months. I decided to go to the doctor and get some happy pills so I could just get through that time. And that actually really helped. And I think I probably should have been on those pills for quite a while longer than I have been.
Do you think even prior to
her diagnosis,
the cannibalism, this would have been helpful for you?
Yes. And because I had always been like, I can handle it. I can do it. I'll just exercise, eat right. There are things sometimes there's times when we need that help,
I'm still going to tell you, Nicole, I think your thyroid is at the base of some of this. I really do. Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised, for sure.
Yeah. I think you have to lean on a doctor, because here's what I would say. I'm not a doctor. I think that's obvious. But because I think it's obvious, because I'm heavily considering calling this episode Diabetic Cannibal. So I think I'm not a serious person, maybe. But I know that TSH is so low. But I wonder if maybe it's a T3 problem right now. Like maybe you're not converting your T4 properly.
Right.
Or like, I don't know, like something's there. You have too many symptoms for it not to be the thing. And there are a lot of people running around thinking they're depressed and anxious who just have out of whack thyroids too.
Yeah.
So
I could see that. I mean, I'll go back and talk to her about it and see and tell her Mr. Scott said.
Yeah, say a guy on the internet who has access to a computer and a microphone said to me that, but I'm glad you're feeling better, obviously, one way or the other.
Yeah.
But that's interesting that it took this for you to. Do you think you ever would have addressed that for yourself if she hadn't been diagnosed?
No.
Why not?
I think I saw it as a weakness that I needed to deal with on my own.
Yeah.
And I think that her diagnosis allowed me to say, okay, I literally cannot get through this time. Like, I can't function unless I do something to better my mental health. And yeah, so.
I wonder all the time, not just now, but bring it up now because you're talking about it. But I wonder what it is about some people that gives them the idea that there is perfection and that somehow not like your, I don't know how to put this, like your physical meat bag body that you are not in charge of, that you didn't get to pick. Like,
right.
If it has, a system where it doesn't work quite as well, like how is that a reflection on you? Like
right.
How
is that failing?
Yeah.
How is that me?
Yeah.
Not right.
Yeah. Cause like you're you. I mean, listen, this is a little, but you're the thoughts in your head. That's who you are. And then this thing transports you around your body. And it's like if Mother Teresa was driving an old beat up Pinto, like would she not still be Mother Teresa?
Mm-hmm.
But your body's a little dinged up and you're like, oh, I'm failing somehow.
Right.
Does that make sense? What I just said?
It completely makes sense. And it really made me want to be, as a mother, as a father, I'm sure a lot of times too, in different ways, we sacrifice things about our body and our mental health so that because we think it's helping our children.
Right.
But I realized in that moment that I'm not going to be able to be her caretaker and do this if I don't take care of myself,
right,
and get better. I mean, it was like do or die situation.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe not physically, maybe I would have survived and all that, but mentally I wouldn't have been the mother that she deserves or my other two children deserve if I didn't get help.
Yeah, I don't know why we don't put more importance maybe on the unit, like the family unit, meaning like why are we so focused on I'll meet a guy, I'll meet a girl, I'll make a baby, I'll keep it alive, and then I'll make sure it learns something. I don't know if that something is how to, change a carburetor or how to like be an accountant, but I'll make sure it learns something and then it's got to go.
Right.
Because that's good for it. It's got to go on its own, go away. And I'm not saying that your kids should live with you till they're 35, but the knowledge that you're there even as an adult is very valuable.
For sure.
And you dropping dead when you're 50 or, whatever.
Right.
Isn't going to
mom's going in a mental institution when she's 40.
Yeah. I'd call my mom and ask her this, but she's right now going,
right.
And like, so I can't get to her. Like, so you being functioning properly, is important to her as well. And we say those things by saying like, put your mask on before the person next to you, but that's not giving it its proper amount of consideration. Like you're trying to build this ever-changing structure that is, coach and player, father and son, mentor and Padawan, like, all like, it's not just, hey, here, I kept you alive, get out.
Right.
You know what I mean? So, and now me and your dad are going to argue until one of us gets cancer. Because that's right. I think that's how a lot of people think about their lives.
I do too. I see that in a lot of people, and I don't want that.
No,
for my family.
Yeah, I don't want the last 20 years of my life just me trying to outlive Kelly so I can go, beat her.
Yeah.
Because after you're married for a while, it can feel like that a little bit. You're like, I'm not going.
It can, and a lot of people, they just go through the day and think, I didn't mess up my kid too much today. Or maybe I did, but whatever. I don't know. And,
I just like you taking care of yourself. I like everyone doing that. I like you feeling your best. And listen, if you're depressed or anxious, you're depressed or anxious. But if it's just because of your thyroid, I don't like ignoring it for 5 years while somebody goes, oh, the number's right. You still have the problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So how is she dealing with the diabetes, and has she tried to eat her insulin pump yet?
She hasn't done that, but she, it's a journey. She definitely has better days than others. The beginning was kind of a struggle just for everybody to understand what you can and can't do and how school's going to work. And obviously, like I said, she goes to a private school and she doesn't have a 504 plan there. I mean, they take it in, but they don't legally have to follow it.
Okay.
So that worried me because when we put her in that school, obviously she had just started going there. I didn't want to take her out because that would just be a huge change again. And obviously she's been going through a lot. So I wanted to keep her in that school. After she was diagnosed, I went in and met with the lead nurse. It's a K through 12 school. So they have 2 nurses for the entire school. And she immediately said she needs to be on a Dexcom. I follow all my type 1 students on their Dexcom. I have it right here in the office. We have 2 nurses. I mean, she made me feel so much better.
Good.
And I was shocked at that level of knowledge and understanding at the private school level.
But you think that was just because they had prior experience?
They did. They had a few other girls that are type 1 that are older than her. So, and that nurse used to work at like one of the biggest public hospitals in Dallas. And so she was pretty familiar with it and helpful.
Okay.
So that made me feel a lot better that she's in their care. And it still does.
How did it actually work out? Like, meaning, like, were you getting, I don't know, the outcomes that effort indicated that might come? Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, listening to you, because I mean, to be honest, the endo is not much help. I mean, the people at the hospital, I just thought that it was, I mean, you know how it is. You're in there, you're taking in information, but you don't know. It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a crazy time. But listening to you and your podcasts and just from other people's experiences. And at that point, obviously we were MDI. I was able to just kind of, the knowledge is power, you know, and it made me more confident in how I cared for her. I think her first A1C was like 6.3 after diagnosis, which it was like 11.4 at diagnosis. So
can I ask, maybe I want to say, not ask. Maybe I'm going to thank you. I'm having a bad day.
Oh.
No, don't feel bad for me. I do this thing where a person like you, who I've never met before 40 minutes ago, comes on, starts telling me about a thing that I've done for them, and comes to the verge of tears, has to stop themselves from crying. And yet on the backside, my job is so not personal. Like, half of my job is to make the podcast.
Right.
And to conceive of ways to help people. And that all goes, I think, exceedingly well. And then the other half of my job is the delivery of that to people who I don't know, can't see, and don't know how to find. And that has recently, in the last handful of months, been thwarted by, of all things, Apple. The largest distributor of podcasts in the world is Apple. The Apple Podcast app, people who hold Apple iPhones in their hand. And they, about 4 or 5 months ago, changed their algorithm. And now when I go to, you have no idea how much work it is just to get a person to pick up their phone and subscribe to this podcast. It is a massive amount of work, right, to get that accomplished. And it used to be that person would download a certain number of episodes every time they went into the app. And that was sort of regulated by the app. And Apple decided that they didn't want you to have quite as many. So they just turned the knob a little bit. And so try to imagine if every person downloaded 2 episodes, now they download 1 episode. If every person downloaded 10, now they download 5, et cetera, and so on. And so my ranking hasn't changed. I still exist in the podcast world exactly where I have. But people are downloading fewer episodes because you don't recognize how much of your consumption is actually driven by the app telling you, here's another episode.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And so now that that's gone, people listen to the episode. They show up today and they listen to today's episode and they go, okay. And then they go off and go on their way and do something else. Right. In the past, they'd get done the episode and the app would be like, yo, here's another one. Or you might have missed this one from 2 years ago, but it's not doing that anymore.
Oh, no.
And so that is impacting in two different ways. So in the first way, it's that people aren't staying involved in the information long enough to have good outcomes, right? Not everybody, but some people. The people who needed the pat on the butt, like stay in here, listen to one more, they're drifting away. And you're also not hearing the ads as much. And because of that, like ad clicks go down. And when ad clicks go down and advertisers go, and then when they make that noise, then suddenly Scott works at Walmart. And like do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
And so I sit here, I was going to use a Yiddish term, even though I'm not Jewish and you're from Texas, but on Spilkus, because I'm upset constantly because I'm trying to figure out a way to make more people who have your experience. And believe it or not, the impediment at the moment is someone at Apple who was like, let's just turn this dial a little bit like this. And it's really
frustrating.
Frustrating. Yeah. And at the same time, there are so many people competing for your time and so little time that it all just sounds like noise. And I very desperately don't want to turn into a person who's like, subscribe and download, tell a friend, like, please listen to one more. Like it sounds so simpish. That's just not who I am.
Right.
But at the same time, your experience with the podcast is a lot of people's experience.
Yeah.
And I don't want it to fade, if that makes sense. Yeah.
No, it does.
Yeah. I also don't want a real job.
I don't want it to either.
Yeah, Nicole. Like, I want to be clear about that. No. I very much don't want a real job.
No.
But that aside, I think this podcast is perhaps so far the most valuable thing I've seen for people with diabetes in the
for sure
15 years that I've been involved in it. And in 20 years of art and having diabetes almost, I don't know, 18 years.
Yeah.
And so it's a strange thing to have something that works so well be knocked off course by something that has almost nothing to do with it, but yet somehow everything to do with it.
I know. Yeah. Some guy, like you said, just deciding to make that decision can affect somebody's health.
Yeah.
And
yeah, isn't that it? And that's exactly my point. Like, I'm not going to tell you that I wrote a letter to Apple trying to explain that, but I did.
Right.
And that, by the way, as I was writing it, I was like, no one's going to read this. But like, I'm like, I know what you guys are doing.
Right.
And by the way, I do know what they were doing. I'm going to bet that what happened is that some podcasters were putting out bullshit content to bump up their download numbers so they could ask advertisers for more money. Okay. But I'm not doing that. I'm actually putting out content.
Yeah. Don't penalize the people who are doing the right thing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm doing everything on the up and up, delivering great content for people 5 days a week. And now suddenly I'm being treated like somebody who is trying to game the system. And in the end, what that means is that someone else isn't going to make it because isn't going to make it to the end, the health and the happiness, because I'm also an acquired taste. Like, you can't just listen to me once and then be like, oh my God, this is amazing. I kind of like, I can come off like a dick sometimes. So like you got to hang in a little bit to get the vibe. You know what I mean?
Right.
Anyway, it was really nice to hear you say what you said earlier. And the reason I brought this all up is because I actually, like, the rest of my day today is going to be spent trying to figure out how to get people from the Facebook group to try the podcast. And it just felt like I was depressed by the idea that this is what my day was going to be.
I can do an ad for you. I don't know what to say. I wish I could help you.
No, and you're very kind. And like, countless people could.
Yeah.
But to who?
I don't know. Maybe on the Facebook group, you could have them share, like, once a week or something, somebody like me share their experience and point them to certain episodes that they found really helpful.
See,
I don't know.
Nicole, that's a great idea. And let me tell you something. No one's going to do that.
I will.
Well, you be first. And that's fantastic. Yeah.
I think they would. I think you're underestimating people.
No, I know they would. I've seen a lot of people do it. It's just they have a life too. You know what I mean? Like you can't ask them to make my thing their problem. And that's how it feels sometimes. It's just, I say it all the time, 50,000 people in that Facebook group. Like 30,000 of them a day are active. If they all just right now went and tried a series, that would be it. We'd be exactly where we need to be. But like, it's impossible to get people to move, I guess. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's my boohoo story. And anyway, from my perspective, I said depressed earlier, though I'm not depressed about it, but it's hard to get motivated.
Oh, I understand that. Yeah. It kind of threw you for a loop, and now you have to you're always reassessing things. It seems like there's nothing like I'm sure in your world, in the podcast world, they changed something like that. And it just like you had a system and now you got to rethink things, and it's frustrating.
There's no way around it, by the way.
Right.
Like the day I watched it happen, it was back in, I want to say September 2023, the end of September, maybe. I mean, I was doing so well and everything was going so great. And I was like, this is it. Like I can really blow this thing up and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden they were like, what if this happened? Click. And then I was like, oh, it wasn't too bad. But then I realized not everybody upgraded their iOS yet. So now over the last 5 months, as a person picks up their phone and goes, oh, I'm going to try iOS 17 now. Then they get the new podcast app and then boom, suddenly they're not getting the episodes as much. And they think it's me. They just think the podcast isn't coming out as much.
Yeah.
Because people don't really understand they don't pay that close attention to how things work.
Right.
You know what I mean? So if the content's not in front of them, then they just think I'm not making it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that was it. I don't want to say I almost threw myself off the roof, but I did consider self-cannibalism that day.
Don't do that either.
I'm going to eat myself from my foot up and see what happens.
Hey, that's a way to make the news and make the podcast go viral.
Podcaster eating his foot. Seems to be taking forever. Anyway, sorry. I apologize. I want to know.
Fine.
No, I feel bad. I really do.
No, don't feel bad. And I mean, just take heart that you are making a difference, and it's not going to waste for sure. And eventually, I mean, not eventually, you are making a big difference. So
yeah, let me say, I don't think any of this is a waste. And to help and I genuinely mean to help one person is really a thing I would say at the kingdom of heaven when I got there. Okay. Like I'd be like, I helped one person. I'd be thrilled to say that right at the end of my life.
Yeah.
But that's not how the reality works. The reality is you listen, you get helped. You also click on a link. Those people pay my electric bill. I get to make more content so the next person gets to listen. Like that's the cycle. And if it doesn't work that way, then seriously, then I have an electric bill and then I have to go do something else.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I am trying very hard for not to happen. Yeah. But it's, and I can joke about, I don't want a real job, but like, I'm never going to help people like this again in my life. You know what I mean? Like on this scale. Yeah. So anyway, I'm going to cry now because
no,
fucking Apple.
I know.
And let me stick up for them for a second. I'm going to bet that Madison Avenue came to them and said, hey, we're getting screwed on ad rates on podcasts for data that seems like aren't real downloads.
Mm-hmm.
And they probably fixed a massive problem and along the way screwed over a few people who didn't deserve it. And I happen to be in that very small bucket.
Yeah.
And there's no way to fix that. And they're not even ever going to know. Unless one of you has diabetes and works at Apple. And then in that case, can you call
Maybe
somebody?
They could change it in the health realm of podcasts. Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, Nicole, here's the other fix, right? A millionaire with the discretional income feels very helped by the podcast and contacts me privately and says, look, what do you make on this advertising? Let me give you 10 years worth of it. Just go make the show.
Right.
And then that be it. That's not going to happen either. You know what I mean? But like all I need is enough support to pay my bills. I just want to retire one day, and help people. Like I just would like to do that for the rest of my time. And I don't know. Hopefully we'll figure it out. But
well, I have faith you'll figure it out.
Thank you.
It's something, I mean, you're, like I said, you're making enough difference with a lot of people. And it's probably hard to tell from your vantage point a lot of times, but there are a lot of people out there rooting for you, obviously.
Thank you. I appreciate
think it'll
that.
work.
And I do know that. I want to be clear. Like, I'm not even complaining. I'm just trying to lay out this is it. And every second that gets put on this is a second I don't put into the AI thing that I'm building for people with diabetes, or the podcast, or a new series that I want to make that I can't seem to start this new series because I wake up every day thinking, I got to save the podcast.
Yeah.
And by the way, that's also ridiculous because today I was number 27 in medicine on the Apple podcast list. Well,
there you go.
Yeah. But if you see the big picture, anytime you start sliding the wrong way, you're like, I'm 3 years away from this exploding. And you have to move it in the other direction. Like, it's anyway, it's not that much fun making a podcast, in case everybody thought it was.
Is it cyclical as far as podcast listening? I mean, sorry if this is completely off topic,
go ahead.
But when my daughter was in the winter, when people are diagnosed, I feel like people are diagnosed in more people in a specific time of year. Maybe that's wrong, but viruses, do you feel like more people listen to you when they're diagnosed versus when they're, 1-2 years in?
Well, you are talking to the right person, because Scotty stares at this like the Torah, trying to figure it out. So January is always a great month. There is absolute truth to the idea that people think that the renewing of the year is a renewing of what they're going to accomplish. And so there's always a big push in January. I try to drop in some incredibly interesting stuff. This year I did the Cold Wind series in January, thinking like, maybe I can grab some more listeners. I think that worked pretty well. Then it's all around holidays.
Okay. Yeah.
And so the first holiday that screws you is Easter. The other thing that screws you is football. Yeah. The 4th of July. And then when school's out, like in the summertime, that takes the moms away from being able to listen as much. And then they flood back after school goes back. It almost feels like January and back to school feel like the same.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Then the lead up to November, third week of November, is always big because people are thinking about eating and holidays.
How am I going to get through this? Yeah.
As soon as Thanksgiving comes, there's a slow drop off that goes right to the end of the year.
Okay.
It's very cyclical. Like, you can see it happen over and over again, but that's not the problem. Like, I want to be clear. The amount of people listening to the show are not the problem. It's the amount of episodes that their app grabs that's the problem. The people are still there, but the downloads have been decreased by Apple. And not by the people or their desire, but by the app not feeding them the episodes.
Yeah.
Which is how we do things. Like, listen, everyone wants to think they're making their own decisions, but
no.
When Netflix says the next episode will be up in 15 seconds, there's a little like cokehead in your brain that's like, God damn right, let's do it again.
Yes.
And if that doesn't happen, you walk away.
Yeah. Everybody's struggling for our attention, or pining for our attention in some way. So they're going to get it somehow. Might as well be you.
There are times that are stronger and times that are weaker. And again, this sounds like complaint. It shouldn't sound like complaining. If you're listening and you think I'm complaining, I don't think you're hearing what I'm saying. But I am the biggest diabetes podcast in the world by a stretch. The second one, which I don't even know what it would be, is I would imagine that if you took the next 10 and added them up, they don't do what I do in a day. That's not what scales, right? Like, it's not how you get to more and more people, help more and more people. And it's not how advertisers hang in.
Right.
So that's the entirety of the entire thing. So all I need is people to subscribe and then, listen. That's it. And if it helps them, tell your doctor, like, all that stuff is incredibly valuable. But, I don't know. I have to be honest. When I launched the Facebook group, I did it for people who asked for it. But on my end, I thought, this is going to make more podcast listeners. But I think it's possible that it didn't work that way.
Really?
I think the Facebook group works so well for people.
It's like their crutch. Like they
almost don't need the podcast.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
Because the podcast is so much more than the Facebook group. But if you feel like you're doing okay, then why do I have to go find a diabetes podcast? You won't know till you get here that, I don't know if you heard the episode the other day where the last 30 minutes of it, the girl talked about her S&M lifestyle for half an hour.
Oh, no, I did not hear that one.
Oh my God. Please, Nicole, do not miss that. But like, you're not getting that in the Facebook group. You know what I mean? Like the entertainment aspect of it, or me bitching about my life or whatever. So, anyway.
Oh my gosh. That's funny.
It's all bizarre because this shouldn't even be a job. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know why not.
I mean, because like a job should be bending something or painting something or fixing something or helping. I don't know. Like I make a podcast. I
know. It's weird to think that there's a whole spectrum of people that are able to just talk for a living, do this. But it's more important than you're giving it credit for. So.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it. What exactly about listening to it helped you? Like, was it just like nuts and bolts stuff, like pro tip series, bold beginnings, that stuff?
I think so. I think it was definitely just the control aspect at the beginning, just getting things under control as far as understanding how certain foods work. Because when you're at the hospital, they don't tell, the nutritionist came in with a box of Fruit Loops for her to figure out how to dose for the first day. And nothing against Fruit Loops, whatever, but we don't feed my kid, we don't feed them Fruit Loops or any cereal hardly at all in the house anyway. And so I was kind of shocked when she came in with that. And I thought, okay, how does that, I don't know. Yeah. I wasn't mad, but I was like, now she's like, sugar, this is what I can eat for breakfast. But that's not something that we would normally feed our kids anyway. Not that that's a bad thing. People should do what they want to do as far as that goes.
Oh, but if she's not eating Fruit Loops to begin with and you're in the hospital, she's like, I have diabetes.
A little shocked at I thought, this is, if anybody from hospitals are listening, you should talk to the parents about their kids' previous nutrition before you come in with what you're going to dose for, et cetera.
Yeah.
I just feel like getting to know that family's lifestyle prior to coming in and talking to them about it can help you. I don't know why you wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Instead of coming in with a lollipop and a bowl of sugar and going, now lick this.
Right. Especially, it's just a little shock. It's not that why not the normal breakfast that you would have and then bolus for that, So, but whatever. I haven't been really pleased with the entire healthcare system as far as it comes to diabetes. What's
your experience been?
Just like that, like just treating everybody the same, and I understand why they do it, but there's no personalization. I don't feel like they try to get to know you as a patient at all. They're just kind of like, they go through the numbers, they go through, you look good, like, bye, and if you have a question, they're like, well, her numbers look fine. And it's not like, well, at this time of day, I would like it to be this, or why is it not, around 100 at night like it used to be, and how can we adjust that? It's just, they kind of look at me like I'm crazy, like I'm expecting too much, or that my kid's doing a lot better than maybe other kids, so why do I care? Why should I worry so much?
Yeah.
And it's not that, it's just, I just have a question,
that fascinates me, that idea of like other people aren't doing well either.
Right. And it's that all the time with, I feel like with the endo and the nurse practitioners, you're like, you're just compared to the last person they saw almost or something. And I just like it to be more personal. Like I'm paying money, to go see. And by the way, we don't have typical insurance. We have Medishare. So after 6 months, her diagnosis isn't even covered through our insurance. So it costs a lot of money for us out of pocket to go see these doctors. And they treat us, I noticed from the beginning that it's just what the insurances want, so they think you're part of the insurance, like what they'll cover, what they'll talk to you about versus what you want to talk about or what you want. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
it's incongruent if what you need versus what they're willing to pay for. And then because that's what they're willing to pay for, that's what the doctors offer.
Yep.
It's only in the last 10 years really where they'd be like, you should meet with the nutritionist.
Right.
And that's because the insurance companies will cover nutritionists. So then they hire a nutritionist and then they go, you should meet with the nutritionist because we can bill for that.
I used to sell insurance. So I understood kind of, this was pre exchange Obamacare, whatever you want to call it. So it's changed a little bit now, but it's just so much different now. It's just less tailoring, more what the insurance will cover.
Yeah.
And they just put you in that group and send you on your way. So.
Oh, the nutritionist is here and they brought Captain Crunch with them.
Right.
The nutritionist and the captain are going to explain everything to you now.
Yeah.
And by the way, you're going to bolus for that Captain Crunch. Your blood sugar is going to go to 300, stay there for 2 hours, come back down. And we're going to say, hey, if you bolus and it comes back down, it's all
then
good.
Then it's fine. Yeah. I know. That's exactly the experience I've had. And it's just so frustrating. So I don't know. I literally only want to go just to get her A1C checked and be on my way because I don't find it helpful to talk to them. So, but you gave me that confidence. You know, I feel like a lot of people don't have that because they just assume these doctors and whoever is in a position of authority knows best. Mm-hmm. And many times they do. You know, they're there for like the worst case scenarios mostly, but if you really just want to take your health into your own hands, it's so much easier to do, you know, through people like you and technology out there that are at our disposal.
Yeah.
That I sometimes think that they wish wasn't there. So.
Wait, you think they wish what? Tell me.
I don't know, because I brought you up actually at my last endocrinologist appointment, and the nurse practitioner was like, oh, he had somebody on there. I don't know about him. And I was like, why? She said, because I said, by the way, my daughter's numbers are good because of him. So, but whatever. She said, because he had a guy on there that did the keto diet. And I just think that's really, really unhelpful or a bad thing for diabetics to do. And I was like, it's a guy. I said, but he doesn't follow that. And he says that you should eat, you know, dose for what you eat, or you need to learn how to insulin works. That's the whole premise of the podcast. And she just kind of scoffed at me and just walked out.
If we're going to expect people not to take a tiny sliver of information and then extrapolate it any way they want to, then I think,
they just assume that's what I'm saying. They assume that you have nothing in your mind, you know, that you're that you're just like the lowest of IQ, basically, when you're in there.
Yeah.
And that if you hear any information other than what they tell you, then it could be harmful or something, you know, that's how I assume.
Right. And by the way, if you've been listening to the Cold Wind series this year, you might hear a lot of people who are in those positions of power telling you, we don't know what we're doing. So yeah. So, you know, it's interesting, isn't it? 1,200 episodes. And they heard one person who did a keto diet, and they're like, that whole podcast, not good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's how people are about all these things now. It's like you hear one person says one thing on one thing, and then
jump to whatever conclusion.
Right. And now that person is associated with that one thing, and they'll never live past it. It's just ridiculous. In
this, scenario, the nurse or the person who's making the observation is only making it from their perspective. So she probably met somebody at some point who did a keto diet and it didn't work well for them. So she's like, oh, he said keto, it's not good. So here's a great example. Let me see if I can find this for you. You want to end on some bitching? Here, I'll bitch with you for a second. Hold on a second. Right a second. Hold on a second. Nothing more Christian than that. Let's get to it. Let's see here. Last night, so part of my job that I don't get paid for is I have to deal with lunatics online. Not often, but every once in a while. So last night, someone put up a very reasonable post about a bunch of people being diagnosed around their house or something like that, a bunch of kids, right? And someone then said, like, I forget, they were in healthcare at some point, and they said, I really think that there's a lot of new diagnoses from COVID. Now, let's be clear. This person was not making some like COVID conspiracy comment.
Right.
COVID is a virus.
Right.
Viruses often precipitate type 1 diabetes diagnoses in people who already have the antibodies.
Well, and it's been proven, by the way. Like there was a study that came out and it said 20% increase in type 1 diagnosis, like since the beginning of COVID.
Yes. And by the way, if a different virus would have happened, in mass, then diagnoses would have went up from that, because I don't have time to explain it to you every time.
Right. But you don't need to. It's just common sense.
It is very common for a person who has type 1 diabetes autoantibodies to have a virus, then their immune system gets bumfuzzled and goes after your beta cells in your pancreas instead.
Especially after a new virus that nobody's ever seen before.
And bada bing, you've got diabetes, right? So this is not a it's not even a
controversial,
not a controversial statement.
No.
And, as soon as that happens, I have people who help me with my group. That post gets marked as keep an eye on it, because at some point it's going to attract lunatics like a rotten banana and fruit flies. Okay. Like it's going to happen. And so it starts to go in the little bit of you start seeing it lean and you're like, uh-oh, here it comes. And then somebody who clearly is coming from like a fairly tinfoil hat, like perspective, it starts ranting about COVID.
Mm-hmm.
It's the vaccine and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Like, by the way, I ain't sticking up for the COVID vaccine one way or the other. I'm just telling you, like, I see how this conversation is going to go.
Right. Like, it's just, nobody's going to get anywhere in that conversation.
It's going to go bad quickly.
Yeah.
And so it starts to go bad in a sub-thread of this thread. By the way, the rest of the post is going fine. It's this one sub-thread that starts getting hinky. And then the person gets very aggressive and starts, like snipping at people and being nasty and everything. And so when that happens, I go up to the top of the tree and I cut the branch so that it all falls off. And so I take out the initial like comment that was made by the person who, if I'm being honest, from my perspective, it felt to me that they had specific COVID beliefs that they were commingling with what was being said so that they could make the argument.
To get that out there.
Yes.
Because that's what they want to talk about. Yeah.
Not because they were trying to have a conversation about what everybody else was talking about.
Right.
So I cut it away and that's it. And I put a nice note with it. Like, hey, listen, I think it seems to me maybe you're, commingling your beliefs with what's being said here. This isn't what these people are saying. They're not saying COVID caused diabetes. They're saying that a virus can precede type 1 and this is common knowledge and well-researched and everything. And I said, and your comments are starting to feel a little anti-vax. And I have to be honest with you. The Facebook algorithm looks for those. And I don't want the Facebook police looking at us. This podcast helps a lot of people. So does this Facebook group. We don't need a problem. I can't have this kind of conversation. Anyway, there's a rule about COVID conversations for this exact reason. That's why I removed your thing. I hope you have a good night. Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Right. As soon as that happens, it's 11:45 on a goddamn Monday night. All right. And this is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, and now why is that important? It's important because 150 new people come into the podcast group every 4 days. And I don't need them thinking that the group is full of conversations and arguments and ranting and raving, right?
Right.
Because it's a very small part of what happens. My group is really good. And so we trim that away. Okay. Well, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, here comes the direct message from this person. You know what I mean? And right away, your liberal agenda.
Oh, Lord.
My liberal agenda?
Aw.
I was like...
Aww. You need to refer that person over for my happy meds.
Well, I'm like, oh my God. Actually, so one of the people that helps me with the board was like, this is usually the Saturday night drinky group. This isn't usually what happens here.
Yeah.
And so listen, I'm socially liberal in my thinking as much as that I hope that everybody gets a fair chance and I would like them to. But I'm fairly conservative financially and like with other things. And I've never told you what I think of the COVID vaccine or anything. Like I've never spoken about it at all. Like you don't really know what I think about that. Right.
Right.
And yet this person right away is like, you have disagreed with me. You are on the other side. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. If you don't like what I said, you have a liberal agenda. And I was like, or I have an agenda where I don't let crazy people rant and rave.
Right.
I don't think this person is crazy because of their opinion. I genuinely don't. I don't know that their opinion's right or wrong. I think they're crazy because of the crazy way they're talking.
Right. Online to a bunch of strangers. And you're not going to change anybody's. And yeah, I know.
It's not because of what they were saying.
Yeah. Right.
How they were saying it. Now I'll take a deep breath because this isn't going to end. I'm going to get another direct message back. And it's going to be telling me, I've been through this so many times, Nicole, I actually know how it's going to go. This next part is going to tell me about all the wrong things that everyone else said. And then like clockwork, it comes. there's literally a comment that says this and blah, blah, blah. And that's not right. And this is it. And blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, it's midnight now. And I'm like, okay. And then I don't respond because I'm like, what am I going to do?
Right.
And then I know that the next step is coming. Do you know what the next step is?
No.
Personal
She's
attacks.
out of the group.
No. Personal attacks. I'm leaving this group. But first, you don't just leave.
Let me tell you real quick, and then I'm going to leave. Yeah,
first, I'm going to insult you in every way that I can conceivably think of. And then I'm going to leave. It's not just personal, like hits, like you're pathetic, which by the way, that's a quote. You're pathetic. This is nonsense. This group has been falling apart for years. Like, it's the biggest, most active, valuable diabetes Facebook group in existence.
Yeah.
It's fallen apart. I knew it. But now I'm out because now you said,
right.
I can't and I'm like, oh my God. And I'm like,
you gotta feel sorry for those people, to be honest. I mean,
I did, honestly.
You almost there's no winning. I mean, obviously that's what they want, but they're not going to do it in any part of their life. I mean, they're just going to. As
soon as I tried to do the right thing, which was competently explain what was happening and why this was really about the health of the group and not about this conversation at all. As soon as I was willing to go back and forth, oh my God, I was like, I know this isn't going to go well.
Yeah.
And it certainly did. I enjoyed being called pathetic at midnight and being told that the effort I've been putting in for the last 10 years that has helped you and many people like you was absolutely just disgraceful and falling apart. I was like, oh my God. Now I let that run off me. Like I honestly, if you and I weren't talking about it today, I don't think I'd ever bring it up, but it's another part of my job that, no one's compensating me for. like, it's not like I wanted to be asleep. I want to be clear. I was trying to go to bed, Anyway, that's just, it's fast. But I brought it up because it's the same mechanism as the nurse who said, I heard the words keto, I'm out.
And didn't even ask me about how did you achieve, I think at that point it was like a 5.9 A1C, the second time nothing about this guy has really helped me. It's just that one thing I heard about him gives me, that he can't be that great.
It's fascinating. Because you sat there and said, I have a 5.9 A1C with my daughter who's 12 years old. This is not common.
MDI. Yeah, right.
All this stuff. I wanted you to know that this is where I got this information from and why I'm doing so well. And that person basically turned and said, he's got a liberal agenda.
And I think it's these people, like not everyone. I'm sure there's wonderful nurse practitioners and endos out there.
Of course.
And of course, they're held to systems that, they work for corporations, most of them. So they have to do what they are told, and they don't have a lot of time to spend with the patient. I understand all these things. But when somebody's telling you something that works for them, listen to them. Yeah. Give them a moment to explain how they achieved that. And you're not helping them. You're not making them want to come to you for anything if you just kind of throw that away.
Yeah. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So she is incapable of helping you to this success on her own, but does not want to hear about how you accomplish it.
Right.
So is her goal to help you or is her goal to keep you reliant on her?
I honestly, I look at it almost like a pyramid. It's like the worse you're doing, the better a patient you are. I hate to say that, but sometimes I feel that way. And I don't know, like, maybe they're more willing to help you if you're having a hard time, but that's not how it should be, So
you were about to say it's like a pyramid scheme, weren't you?
I did. And I hate to say that, but sometimes the healthcare, it kind of is. So you look at it, but
it sucks. But
I don't think that they're wanting you to stay unhealthy or bad things to happen. I'm not saying that. I just think that it's not even the way that it's set up, the corporations and the system. I don't think it's meant for everyone.
Yeah.
I don't know how to say it, but I think that if you're a capable person, you're able to take care of yourself outside that system. Of course you need it for some reasons, go get your blood work, blah, blah, blah. But it's just a blessing that we have people like you that are able to take us to that next step, and before, I can't even imagine, I say this all the time and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but can you imagine 30 years ago growing up with this and not having all these resources and technology? I thank God every day for that, because I literally wouldn't be able to do any of this or have faith that my kid could go out there in the world and deal with this disease and stay healthy.
Well, I'm genuinely happy that it's been valuable for you. Sincerely.
Oh, yeah.
And I appreciate you being willing to say it and being willing to say it to the doctor. And
I'll say it over and over again.
Thank you. You're very nice.
It won't stop me. Yeah.
I appreciate it very much. So I appreciate you being part of my liberal agenda today. Person doesn't know who I vote for. Isn't that interesting? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, it's crazy that the leap that it takes to get, because look, I'm conservative, but I'll be the first one to tell you, like, I none of my family took the vaccine, whatever, but I don't care if you did, and I don't care if you have opinion, whatever. But the second you start getting testy with people and mean about it, then it almost looks like you're not confident in what you believe,
right?
Enough to just say, like you said, the post wasn't even about that. It was about, COVID can make, whatever. Maybe two things can be true at once.
Yeah, and I can't go to sleep, by the way, while you're letting your crazy out on my board.
Right.
It was attacking. And by the way, if you point that out to those people, they go, no, I'm not. I'm just telling them what's right. And I'm like, oh my God, like dial it down a little bit. Like, I don't know. Like, I always see those people and I'm like, oh my God, your spouse must just be like hiding in a closet somewhere right now.
That's what I was thinking when you were telling me about her, but I didn't want to say it.
Go like, yell at somebody who loves you. Go yell at somebody who loves you. Leave me alone. You know what I mean? Or just say what you think and move on.
Exactly.
There are conversations happening in that group constantly with people who disagree with each other.
Right.
Lovely people who have differing opinions, who list their opinion and then move on. Don't come back every 5 seconds going, oh yeah, and this, and this, and this, and you, and this, and what are you doing? And so you're a healthcare professional, putting things in quotes. I'm like, oh my God.
Aww.
All right. Listen, if you want to see the other side of it, you send your kid to a Christian school. I assume you're a fairly religious person. You've called yourself conservative. I've been completely clear on this podcast a number of times. I don't believe in God.
Right. Yeah. I know you know that. Yeah.
You can still get your diabetes information here. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
and the thing is like, you can still be helped by somebody who doesn't believe the same things that you believe. Yes. I mean, and if you think that they have to believe the vaccine was created to kill people, whatever, I don't know. Like,
I believe it was putting
that doesn't take away from what their core, what they're doing and what they're helping with. And like I said, two things can be true at the same time, but it doesn't matter what you think about that specific subject. You are here because your kid has diabetes and you want to get them better or yourself better, or you want to, live a more complete and healthy life.
Yes. Nicole, obviously the vaccine was developed to test the population's willingness to fall in line so that later we can be subjugated. Look,
I love a conspiracy theory as much as the next person. Trust me, I could go down a rabbit hole, but I have to stay attached to reality.
These are fun. Listen, they're not fun conversations, but you can't actually figure out if they're true or not.
No, I mean, and the thing, and to argue as if it is true, and if you don't believe the same thing, then everything you're saying is invaluable.
Nicole, I believe you understand my position. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not telling you you're wrong. I'm telling you, what are we doing right now? Like, are you going to talk 5 people in a Facebook thread into this? Okay, you got them. Now what?
But it's funny that you related it to the endocrinologist's office, because I said that one thing.
Oh, it's the same exact thing to me.
It's the same thing. It is the same exact. It's like a religion, or it's a conspiracy. Yeah. I don't know what it is, but it's.
Well, yeah, I don't want to. Listen, I'm not going to bore you, but I don't know where else to say this. Like, because if I start talking about it on a regular episode, I'll go on for 2 hours. But I have the very quick story is that I just began keeping chameleons a few months ago. And
that's very random.
Yes, it is. And I didn't know anything about it, and it was kind of dropped in my lap as a gift. They're very difficult to do, and there's a lot of technical stuff that you need to know to accomplish it. And the information you get from pet stores is not accurate or good. Sound familiar? Sound like diabetes to you a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And so I had to go off into the world and find a person who was having a lot of success and figure out how to mimic their success. Sound familiar, Nicole?
Uh-huh.
Right? And then I did all that, had my success, and then I started paying attention to the person as a content creator. And every once in a while, just like I did today, you get overwhelmed with the mountain of shit that you have to overcome to tell somebody about how to well hydrate their chameleon or to how to pre-bolus for their meal. And you start seeing them as a person who's trying to get through the roadblocks that Apple puts up, the roadblocks that Instagram puts up, that Facebook puts up, that all these things happen to get you this information. And I looked one day and I went, holy shit, this guy named Bill is me. He's Scott for chameleons.
He's Scott of the chameleon world.
And I'm Bill of diabetes. And he and I are having the same exact fucking life. And
That's
the same problems, the same interactions with good people and with people who are a little nutty and with people who are defending their ego and with people who are defending their opinions and their perspective. And I'm like, oh my God, it's the exact same thing. And then I was like, everything's the same.
It is. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, it is.
Everything just breaks down into these small subsections of how people react and then how they react inside of the ecosystem and how the ecosystem can handle it or can't handle it and how the person at the center of it is put in charge of trying to keep it all from spinning off its axis. And I'm Bill and Bill is me. I am Bill and Bill. There's a Beatles song in there somewhere. Anyway, fascinating. And I've spent the last couple of months not only learning incredibly well from a man named Bill Strand how to manage chameleons, but I got a mirror held up to me and I was like, oh my God, that guy's existence is my existence.
Yeah. I wonder what the online chameleon world is like.
It's exactly like the diabetes world. It's exactly the same.
I wonder what the conspiracies are there.
Oh.
Yeah. Must be interesting.
Here's one for you. Here's a major argument in the chameleon world, right? How you hydrate your chameleon. So chameleons don't drink. Like you don't put a bowl of water out for them, for example. But if they're dehydrated enough, they will lick liquid off of like dew, off of leaves and places like that. So there are people who like massively soak the cages so that the chameleons can drink. Well, a handful of or more years ago, and this is me talking a little out of school because I don't have the depth of history on this one. The other people do. But people realize that if you use fog to bring up the humidity in the cage overnight, that the chameleon breathes that in overnight and then does have no need to drink. The caveat there is that if you don't dry out the enclosure, then you could get mold and fungus and the chameleons could have problems on their feet from touching wet branches and everything. So there's a balance to have between the humidity and then drying that humidity out over and over again, right? And they argue about that the same way people with diabetes argue about low carb.
That's funny.
It's insane how similar it is.
Funny.
Oh my God. Anyway,
oh my gosh.
My chameleons are very well hydrated.
Apparently.
And I don't spray them incessantly with water to accomplish that. So, and I learned how to build my own fogger, which I'd be happy to explain to you, Nicole, at another time. But
I don't know if I'm going to be taking on the chameleon world.
Can I tell you something about this fogger that I've built? Also would work as an amazing humidifier in your home.
Oh, yeah, I can see that.
And you live in Texas, so maybe you do need my help.
I don't know. It can get pretty dang humid here. So.
Yeah, well, I imagine in the winter it's not, but am I wrong?
No, the winter isn't as humid for sure, but the summers can be pretty brutal for sure.
Nicole, you've been really lovely to listen to my complaining and then to say nice things in between. So,
well,
and I'm so happy for you and your daughter. And please get your thyroid looked at and send me a note and tell me how that goes.
I'll let you know. I'll message you if I hear anything from them. But...
I appreciate it. I really do.
All right.
Hold on a second for me.
Okay.
Jalen is an incredible example of what so many experience living with diabetes. You show up for yourself and others every day, never letting diabetes define you. And that is what the Medtronic Champion community is all about. Each of us is strong, and together we're even stronger. To hear more stories from the Medtronic Champion community or to share your own story, visit medtronicdiabetes.com/juicebox and look out online for the hashtag Medtronic Champion. I want to thank the Eversense CGM for sponsoring this episode of the Juicebox Podcast. Learn more about its implantable sensor, smart transmitter, and terrific mobile application at eversensecgm.com/juicebox. Get the only implantable sensor for long-term wear. Get Eversense. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. If you're not already subscribed or following the podcast in your favorite audio app like Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please do that now. Seriously, just to hit follow or subscribe will really help the show. If you go a little further in Apple Podcasts and set it up so that it downloads all new episodes, I'll be your best friend. And if you leave a 5-star review, I'll probably send you a Christmas card. Would you like a Christmas card? I was looking for a way that we could all get nice and tan and meet each other and spend some time talking about diabetes. How are we going to do that? On a Juice Cruise. Juice Cruise 2025 departs Galveston, Texas on Monday, June 23rd, 2025. It's a 5-night trip through the Western Caribbean, visiting, of course, Galveston, Costa Maya, and Cozumel. I'm going to be there. Erica's going to be there, and we're working on some other special guests. Now, why do we need to be there? Because during the days at sea, we're going to be holding conferences. You can get involved in these talks around type 1 diabetes, and they're going to be Q&As. Plenty of time for everyone to get to talk, ask their questions, and get their questions answered. So if you're looking for a nice adult or family vacation, you want to meet your favorite podcast host, but you can't figure out where Jason Bateman lives, so you'll settle for me. If you want to talk about diabetes, or you know what, maybe you want to meet some people living with type 1, or just get a tan with a bunch of cool people, you can do that on Juice Cruise 2025. Space is limited. Head now to juiceboxpodcast.com and click on that banner. You can find out all about the different cabins that are available to you and register today. Links in the show notes, links at juiceboxpodcast.com. I hope to see you on board. The episode you just heard was professionally edited by Wrong Way Recording. wrongwayrecording.com.